Hello, my name is Tabs and welcome to episode 100 of the Grove podcast. Now, I hope you're all doing well and have had good weekends, and of course made even better by the fact that we finally scored a goal against Newcastle this year and we won, which was a pleasant, I think, surprise for some people. So there we go. So double celebration today, episode 100 and a victory against Newcastle and Champions League qualification and pretty much securing second place. So it's a good day all round. Anyway, joining me to celebrate all those things and again, barring a ridiculous turnaround in goal difference, the second place is Jamie. How are you doing? And did you get the happy finish you were looking for on Sunday?
It's an excellent reference to the fact I was meant to be going for a massage. I did get the happy finish, but I didn't get in the massage parlour. No, that's it. That's all I have to say on the subject.
Sorry, I had to do one, and that was for Sasha. Because yeah. Anyway, there we go. All right. Anyway, good. Glad to hear you're well.
Jokes, aren't you, mate?
No. It was my joke in the group chat. I just wanted to call out here for Sasha because I know he listens. So there we go. Anyway, before we get on with the show proper, I did want to acknowledge that it is our 100th episode, which is no mean feat. And fortunately or unfortunately for some, I've been on all 100 of those. And I just wanted to say thanks to everyone that's listened over the last year and a half since we started the pod. Our first one being the 5-0 win against Crystal Palace post Dubai last season. And look, I love doing this, and hopefully the people that come on and listen enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy listening. And yeah, really appreciate it, and I really like the interactions we've had with people online and in person. And it's also given me a chance to meet other Arsenal fans, to get to know people from other podcasts online, and I've met them in person, had a drink, seen them at the stadium. So that's been, for me personally, pretty cool. But I also wanted to say thanks to all those from the Grove that have contributed since the beginning, since we started, when we got the pod underway and so on. So the likes of Whale, Tom, Chi, Cern, Sensi, and apologies if I've forgotten anyone, I was racking my brain. And then there's the current crew of Kusiva, Jamie here today, Ian, and then there's Darwit, who does a lot of the good work behind the scenes on the socials. And I'm sure he's going, why hasn't he said my name yet? I will call out Moz, whose brainchild all this was back in the day. And without him, we wouldn't be here today. So make of that what you will. So again, thanks all for listening. And here's to the next 100 episodes. So there we go. Anyway, enough of that. In today's show, we'll look back at, I thought it was quite an eventful 1-0 win versus Newcastle. And then we'll look ahead to the last game of the season, when we can just relax and watch everyone else suffer the top 5 and Euro battle. So because it really doesn't matter anymore. All right. Anyway, as we always do, Jamie, what was your highlight and low light from the game? And as many as you like.
Highlights. I think biggest highlight for me was it can't. I'm sorry. I'm kind of sneaking in with the thing that everybody would want, right? But it's easily Declan Rice's goal, just because that's yet another time in this last few months now where I've rewatched that goal far too many times. Not just Rice's wonderful strike, which is just. He just seems to be playing with the confidence to want that all the time at the moment. I'm sure he had about 3 efforts that he tried from outside the box, actually. But also Martin Odegaard as well, who I thought had a much livelier second half than he's had for a while, and laid on a pretty perfectly paced pass to allow him to sweep it home in that way. So yeah, that was my highlight bar mole.
No, that was a good one. I mean, before I get to your other ones, I mean, it's a weird one. I was just thinking about it now. He both simultaneously sort of placed it and did it really nice with the ball curving away. But there's another angle that it looks like he twatted it, that it went really hard. If you look at how much the net bulged when he hit it. So it both simultaneously didn't look that hard. It was more placed. And then also, wow, that was a really good, and the technique, and it wasn't like it was striding and all that. It was sort of a bit underneath him, but it was just perfect. And loved
it's
it.
got something, I don't know what about it, but it reminded me, the way he struck the ball, of the way that you strike, that you see it being twatted in five-a-side when you're not allowed to go over head height, right? Where
Yeah.
it's really fucking pacey, but it sort of doesn't look it. It's sort of deceptively pacey, right? And
Yeah.
it's just when you're playing in goals in five and all of a sudden it just whizzes past you and you're like, hang on a minute, he's just side-footed at that rate, Except he did it
Yeah.
from like 22, 23 yards going across goal.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was a hell of a strike. Really, really beautiful. And he's just, again, that's what that kind of confidence will do for you now, right? The fella has always known how to strike a ball, and now he's taken them on.
Yeah.
So
Good
that
to
was
see.
lovely, and just beautifully timed as well. I thought for the kind of cadence of the game.
Yeah.
And as for the low light, I mean, I think probably, to be honest, when we just didn't seem to be able to get our shit together for about the original 30 minutes, to be completely frank. I mean, I really felt we just looked a lot like we were at the beaches. So just pretty much the 30 minutes, I can't isolate a moment within them because there were just too
Yeah.
many of them. A fair few of them are me panicking around kind of Gordon in particular. And lots of antsy moments of scrambling around in places that I don't normally see us scrambling around in. So I'll just say that whole kind of 30 minutes without isolating any of them. I'm sure we'll talk about a couple of them, but
No,
I can't
indeed.
single one out. It just got me really worried early on. It just felt like we're so on the beach now. Bloody hell, this could be. I mean, I think a lot of moans going on around me, and I was just sort of half thinking, good God, we could even end up being in trouble against Southampton here, and crashing all the way down.
Yeah.
So
We'll
yeah,
come
a
to
bit
that.
of an anxious 30 minutes to start with for me is by far the low light, and luckily things started to pick up a little bit after that.
Yeah, no, and that was all happening right in front of me, just because it was like where I sit in the stadium, so you could just see it all. Like, oh my God, there's like a lot of there was a lot of tension in the stadium, and look, we'll get to that. In terms of my highlight, I had quite a few, and we'll touch them maybe a bit later. But also now, I'm surprised you didn't say KT coming on for his final appearance at the Emirates. I thought that might have been one of yours, but that was nice to see.
Not
And
a highlight,
and I'm
mate. That was a contender for low light. The fact
oh
that
wow, okay.
it is the last time I'm.
Oh, maybe. Well, the fact that he got on, at least he got on. So that was. I was wondering
There
if
was a
he
lad
if
in
he.
KT top right in front of me in the clock who genuinely, not shitting you, thought he was going to burst into tears. He was singing one Kieran Tierney for about 20
Oh,
minutes before he came on, mate.
oh,
It was quite clear
fantastic.
who his favourite geezer around the Arsenal
Yeah.
was. So
I,
yeah.
I was wondering if Kieran Tierney, if he scored, if he had like a Tesco's plastic bag shoved in his socks, that he would have got out and showed to the crowd. That'd been brilliant. But that'd be so great. Or there should be a fan in the front row with a Tesco's bag, and he'd run up and grab it. So okay, so maybe highlight, low light. A bit of an obscure one was there's a photograph doing the rounds of Miles Lewis Skelly laughing in Dan Burns's face, or maybe chest, because of the height difference, with that scuffle at the end, and he just sort of like, he just didn't give two shits. And Dan Burn was obviously throwing his toys out the pram and all the rest of it. And there was just that. It just speaks volumes of who he is and how he acts, and just doesn't care. And also, actually, during the game, he actually managed to win a header against that basketball player. You see him just taking a run up from miles away and just won the header, and against 10'10" Robert Ludlow, Dan Burn, whatever you call him, and that's one for the Guinness Book of Records. Look him up. Players. So yeah, I'm not a big. I just can't get Dan Burn as a footballer. So anything that proves that he's not a proper footballer, I'm all here for. So
It's harsh stuff. Like,
it just winds me up. It just doesn't look right. But there we go. So yeah, that was the highlight for me. In terms of low light, just very simple. It's the fact that, despite the season being a slog and everything about it, is just not going to be back at the Emirates until August. So I know we're all due a good break, and I think we're looking forward to it. It's also, you'll be going, it'd be nice to go back soon. So maybe that's my little low light. And I sort of hung on for as long as possible before I got kicked out by the stewards. So there we go. All right.
do you know, it's mad though. And I was just thinking, when you were saying about the 100th episode and it only being about a year and a half, and now, it's picked up, as you say, pretty much off the back of Dubai, and start of the the post Christmas campaign really last season. The
Yeah,
fact that the episodes pretty much align to one per game, and there's been 100. Well, I mean, it really does show just how much there's been over the last 18 months, just how many football matches we've played, right? It's
it's
absolutely
nuts.
crazy.
It's nuts,
Absolutely
and not,
crazy. Bearing in mind as well, by the time it started, we'd already gone out of both cup competitions, I'm fairly sure, as well, last season.
yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'd lost to Liverpool, and yeah, we weren't in the Carabao Cup. So yeah, it's well, and I think we'll touch on that in a bit, just the amount of football and what it means.
yeah.
So and well, there we go. Look, in terms of the lineup, and it impacted the lineup to a certain extent. Um, so we had Raya in goal, thank God. White, Saliba, Kivior, and Skelly, and then Odegaard, Partey, Rice, Saka, Trossard, Martinelli. So given we knew Marino was suspended, and I think we all knew about, well, apart from the news today, that Timber, I don't think there was any great surprises there, but it was nice to see Havertz on the bench. Good to him back. So yeah, I mean, not really much to say about the lineup. I guess you've heard the news about Timber, that he needs ankle surgery.
Yeah, and it's what it is, and it looks like he's been playing on some kind of knock for quite a while now. And that's that, but that is I think the disappointing bit is the number of people I've seen sort of going on about overuse and leveling at Arteta and rotation and stuff yet again. And you're like, who do we have available? Who do we have available for most of that time? You know, like what are you going to do? Ben White's been out the entire time.
Yeah,
Tommy Asu, unfortunately, now is in that position where you don't know when when and if he's ever coming back for the Arsenal. And that's kind of what you need to do, unfortunately. And you need to play a lot of football, and you need to play on knocks, and that's kind of the way that a lot of footballers go.
yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but that is the rigor and demand of being a professional footballer, right?
Yeah, I think he's been struggling since PSG, even the home leg. And look, it's nuts coming back off a season where he missed the whole season because of the ACL. He's then come and played like around 3,700 minutes, 48 appearances this season, and mainly because of White. White, if White was fit, and even now White is, you can tell he's still not up to speed, still not 100%. So you're right. Timber has to play. Had no real choice, because who else? I can't remember the young guy from the academy who I think he played one game in the Carabao Cup at right back. I've forgotten his name now.
I keep going to say Tompkins, and it's not Tompkins, but it's
No, but it's I know, yeah. Well,
yeah,
you'll get it eventually. You'll remember it like at 4 o'clock. You'll remember it at 4 o'clock this morning. That's when it normally happens. So yeah, look, it is what it is. Hopefully it's just a minor thing and he can rest up and then be back for pre-season. So maybe the good thing is he misses the internationals with the Dutch team, so he just gets it done and he'll be ready, when we start pre-season in July, which is like 6 weeks away. So, but yeah,
yeah.
it's just I think the biggest talking point in terms of lineups was the fact that Newcastle were missing Isak again. Thank God, because I think it might have been a different story had he played. So it's either a groin injury or out of respect for his future teammates. I can't work out which is the truth. So we'll see. Hopefully, yeah, I know.
Deluded optimism right there. I think, yeah.
I know. I'm stretching. Maybe they didn't want the Arsenal hierarchy in his ear whilst he was in the confounds of the Emirates. So, but yeah, no. Apparently, he was out with a groin injury, and I said, luckily for us. And but yeah. So look, what were your thoughts about the game as a whole? How we played, how Newcastle played, how we got away with it? Yeah. What were your thoughts from the clock end?
Well, I mean, first half was not a huge amount of fun. I didn't think. I mean, I'd be interested actually. I don't know whether we've got any of the stats for this one,
Oh
but
yeah,
first half wise, I didn't feel necessarily it was one of those games where they didn't have like all the ball throughout that period and dominate us off the pitch. We just looked really bloody sloppy. We really allowed them to have the initiative, I thought, and look like the better team, and they just looked more up for it. And I thought everybody looked really pensive, a bit leggy, a bit sort of realising that they're not quite on top of where they are. I thought Ben White, unfortunately, a couple of times looked a bit rusty, and then he grew into the game. fortunately, which was really good. I actually thought he ended up having a decent game all round for his return. But early doors, I thought he looked quite sluggish and a bit sort of. There were a couple of times where we got caught with possession up on the right hand side when the little triangle between Saka and Odegaard was breaking down, which was looking very rusty as a whole early on, and he sort of ambled back a bit in a way that he doesn't normally do. He really sort of looked a bit slow and like he had a little bit of weight on his feet. So that was a bit odd. And then across the rest of the team, really, first half, only two players seemed to show up, which were David Raya, as he did throughout the match, and was superb. But he had to be honest. He had quite a few stops to make, a couple of really good ones. And then I thought also Trossard had a really good first half. I thought by far all of our best moments in the first half came through Trossard, and there were a few as well. Martinelli was getting a little bit of joy of being, they seemed to sleep on him and let him have a lot of space in front of him at times. But, he didn't really punish anybody for it. Whereas Trossard, on the other hand, looked like if he got a little bit more of a sniff, he had a cracking curling strike that he nearly put top corner that required a decent stop out of Nick Pope. And he was kind of cutting inside little tricks and bits, and he really took on his fullback, and I thought was by far our biggest creative spark. But all in all, the first half for me was one of those where you were really praying for it. I think we had 0 seconds of stoppage time for the first time that I remember in quite a while, and it really felt like the ref put in everybody out their misery, as Newcastle had sort of laboured to try and capitalise on the fact that we were a bit shit, but they weren't quite good enough to be able to do that. And we, on the other hand, had really just looked quite crap, in my opinion, that first half. I think it might be the worst entire 40 minutes as a whole that I've seen from us at home in quite a long time. But yeah, what about yourself? How did you feel about it? Any more optimism or anyone to call out?
Well, no, I'll get a couple of things, but just to answer your point. So in terms of the game as a whole, it was 51-49 possession, so fairly even as a whole. And Newcastle's possession was sort of stacked towards the front and the end, and ours was sort of in the middle. XG, and for once, and I'm pleased to see this, that we only had 0.64 to their 1.86. They had 12 shots to our 14. We had 4 on target to their 5, and they had 1 big chance to their 3, and they missed their 3, and we missed our 1 big chance. And in terms of the first half, actually, we had 58% possession.
Again, I thought it felt like we had a little bit more of the ball. They just felt
it's where that possession was.
When they had it, right?
Yeah, and I'll touch on what I thought in terms of how they played. And their XG was 1.46 to our 3.3, and so on. And again, I mean, there was a couple. And before I actually get on to the game, how were you feeling before the game? Did you feel like it was a big game? Were you sort of nervous about the game? Because it was like all those games that didn't matter all of a sudden mattered, and a win from one of those would have been quite nice about then. So that all of a sudden we had to win, because they said there's a slim chance if we lost yesterday, and had they had Isaac, could have happened. We don't really want to be going to the last game of the season, and even if it is Southampton, have Ramsdale just have one of those games against a bogey team that, and the state of our squad, I don't think we need that shit, or we didn't need it. So were you nervous at all for the game or for our Champions League spot?
A bit. I'm not nervous for the Champions League spot. I thought we'd get 3 out of the last 2, and and that was always going to guarantee 3rd place at least, right? But I always felt we wanted to go into this game not needing anything out of this. I didn't mind if we went into this game still needing a point to 3 points to continue to go and nail second, which I do think is, as much as I don't think the difference between second and third is that meaningful in most respects, it's still something, right? You don't really want to move backwards. You do want to have that second place again and sort of nail it on. And in particular, you don't want it. I think it was more important in this game that it wasn't City trying to catch us, that I almost wouldn't have been as bothered by, in a weird way. It was Newcastle. And for Newcastle, it would be a big moment, a big sign of progress. And there's something about that, a bit like Villa have done with us a couple of times. They've particularly tried to rattle our cages at particular times, right? Villa tried rattling our cages a lot as a club and as a set of supporters when they were starting to position themselves in the top five. Even initially, even pre-Emery, but just during the time that we were having a really pretty awful time at our end. And similarly, since then, Newcastle have been the agitators for us as a club, that have been trying to push for that second and third and fourth spots themselves. And I think there's been a lot of back and forth with their fans due to a lot of the games that we've had. There's been a lot of niggle in that relationship over the last few years. And so, I think it became really important in my mind in the run-up to this game. It became a game that I felt was not a must-win. It was just a must-draw. I was just like, I don't want to finish behind these bastards, basically. And that's kind of how I felt about the match. And so, I was a little nervous in the respect that it was completely different to the bunch of other league games before it. But it's still at the same time there was some amount of almost like a lack of ability to get truly up for it, if that makes sense. I didn't feel really G'd up and buzzed up before the game or all week or anything like I would a City game or a Liverpool game or whatever it might be. It just at the same time had this thing in my head where it was more of an anxiety of going, we need to pick it up this week. We can't be shit this week. We need to pick it up this week.
Look, for me, if you can't finish first, finish second. And if we don't, and finishing second, why would I want City or Newcastle, Villa, even Chelsea, finishing above us? And you can imagine the narrative going into next season, and it just these things make a difference in that. And then also, so at least they can't call back on this. Or remember last year we finished above you. We would have been. They say, finishing fourth or third in a 2-horse race. Not that it was really 2-horsey anyway, but and I just think, well, you might as well fit as high as you possible because it just shuts down. Okay, we've got to deal with the consequences of finishing second. But at least it shuts down anything about finishing third or fourth, or I said heaven forbid out of it. So yes, in the scheme of things, finishing second or third doesn't really matter. But I think it's just a perception thing. So you just don't have that chat. So again, we can just nullify that. So for me, that's important. As for the game, look, we're just knackered. I think in terms of being shit, it's more a case of that's a consequence of just being knackered, and the game was all about the result. I don't think in terms of the performance there's anything worth really assessing or analysing, or and I don't think really anyone cares because look, at the end of the season, what do you do now? And I just think we've been knackered for several weeks, and it's the end of a tough, challenging season, and the players are running on fumes. So like I think they're
and the
mentally
motivation's really hard, right? You've just had the climb down of the Champions League, which was, there's no doubt in their mind that was what they were going for as a squad, as a bunch of guys who want to win something. And then you're faced with, as you say, I'm not that bothered about second versus third. Don't get me wrong, I'd like it, but I'd like it isn't the same as needing it, right? Whereas Newcastle, on the other hand, are in a need position, and it's like I've always said, like the extra few percent that you get when you're applying it to Premier League players is so telling. It really is.
Yeah, and look, we have limited fitness. You can see that in the players. You can see some of them struggling. I mean, what was interesting is that it was a bit like the Liverpool game. We got better as the game went on, and Newcastle actually started to fatigue, and so that helped. But what is incredible, or what I find again that they don't get credit for, and again, everything in the past, we know why we're here, yada yada yada. But they still have to go out there, and the players on the pitch, they're not to blame for everything that's gone around them. They still need to go out there and try and do something. So they managed to lift themselves. They dug in deep, and against a very difficult, imposing, challenging opponent. And I think that's a massive credit to them, and a credit to Arteta. He sets the team up, and so I think you can't take that away from them. I think they just had one last big effort in them, just to get over the line. And I think the most important thing is, and again, very closely, was to not go 1-0 down. Because against Newcastle, you go 1-0 down, the way we were not coming back. There was just No,
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 no. If you allow
no chance.
Botman and
Yeah.
who's the other centre half they've got there as well, Shah or
Shah,
whoever.
there's Shah, and they play five. Well, they would have gone definitely five at the back. There was three at the back, but they would have gone
Yeah,
five.
you just let those boys. They're
Yeah,
sort of these big bodies who just they
yeah.
defend the
Dan
penalty area
Burn.
so well. Yeah,
Yeah,
they don't get me
yeah,
wrong. I think Newcastle's problem at times is that they don't defend so well when they're asked to go forward and press,
yeah,
but and open up a bit. But if you let them close down, if you let
yeah,
them, just close up shop, we've
yeah.
seen it down our place a bunch of times, haven't we?
Well, yeah,
They
and
can
they've done
play
it to
angle
us.
football as well as anybody. Eddie
Yeah,
Howe
yeah, yeah.
sets up teams that can do that.
Yeah, and we did try and self sabotage as much as possible because even as good as Raya was, he was also culpable for one of the lead up to the save. But I think, yeah. So so but again, we dug it out. Things went our way for a change, and we hung on, and we did enough to take the win. And I was actually quite impressed with Newcastle, and I even wrote down in my notes in the first half. And I hate to say this is how somehow has Arteta's number tactically. I think sometimes, or
Mm.
there's something about the way they set up, the way they play, and they could play different. And I was watching; they can be physical. They went long. They can be fast on the counter. They can play intricate. They can be tough at the back, and they played 5-3 at the back, which we don't like to play against. Tonali was running the show, but the main thing was we could not push their wing backs back. So Martinelli and Saka, because we couldn't push them back, and if we tried to, we had so much space in the middle that they had massive gaps in the midfield. So it seemed like every time they were attacking, they would overload and they had an extra player. You're looking at why have they got the extra player? Why have they got the extra player? The other thing, Ben White doesn't have the energy to get up and down to push back. Lewis Skelly's inverting, so he's not pushing their wing back. So that formation that they played against us, it felt like it was, and they usually are kryptonite, whatever they do. But it just we giving our energy levels, we just couldn't find a way through that. And I think once we did get those energies back, once we got the legs and they started to fatigue, then particularly second half, it wasn't so effective. But first half and that first 30 minutes, like you talked about, that I think the way they deployed their wing backs, I think it was Jacob Murphy and Livramento. Yeah, I think that's what enabled them to play the
Mm.
way they did and take us through, then take us. But again, so we can go through the minutes now, and there was that first chance. Was it in the 6th minute where I'm not sure who he was passing to because it was way too hard for Partey, but way too short for Trossard. But it was like a real bullet of a pass to no one, and then I can't remember, but it ends up they're quite a nice intricate play. Some back heel goes to Guimaraes. Maybe should do better from just inside the box, but he got saved, and then it was sort of just going his head, and he reached back to stop that going in. So
What minute did you say that was, Tabs?
that was the 6th minute. Oh, did you not
Was
see?
it?
You missed it. Yeah, yeah.
No,
So you
no,
missed
because I
it.
was running about trying to get to the right seat, wasn't I?
Yeah. Oh, yes, indeed. So you missed that. Yeah. So that was the. I think that was sort of in a way. Yeah. That was scary. And then there was the one that. Oh yeah, then we had our first. So what you would have seen most probably is our first chance in 14th minute when there's the Saka corner. So this is going well. Saka corner, Party glancing header, and it just hits Pope. Pope knows nothing about it. He's sort of just making a starfish, doing his Peter Schmeichel impression, and it hits him. So there we go. And then
Yeah, I was very
and
excited for that one. I was not far off being in line for that one, and it
yeah,
was
yeah.
that was a big one in fairness.
Yeah, I think we were targeting, trying to get underneath Pope's face and under his nose with the corners, and that one was executed perfectly. It's just if Party maybe misheads it a bit, it goes it goes in a different spot. But it's not a lot you can
It was
do there. And
interesting.
then
I don't know which minute it was, but it was certainly first half because it was when we had an exchange of corners, and I don't know whether it was that exchange or whether it was one a little later because we had a couple of
yeah,
times where we had about 3-4 corners in a row. It felt
yeah,
like, and there was a real, almost a bit of a remonstration via kind of sign language between Cuesta and Trossard and Saka, with
okay,
Trossard and Saka kind of setting up to take the corners and looking over to Cuesta being very animated, giving lots of instructions about it,
mm,
and Trossard sort of and Saka, from what I could see, which was, they were kind of right in line with me and quite close. Seemingly, the two of them going, "What's he on about?" and kind of going, "Yeah, no, we don't agree with that," and not wanting to do what they were being told. So it's kind of
Oh wow.
strange because normally when you get those signals out from Cuesta, everything seems relatively
Yeah.
smooth, and you go, "Cool, yep, okay," we're going for this special trick or whatever it might be, or we're going
Yeah.
for, now we're going to move from, we were meant to be targeting here for most corners,
Yeah.
we're now going to target this one or whatever, right? This
Yeah.
was a real kind of heated Cuesta moment, whilst then, as I say, the two players just seemed to almost be
But
disputing it a little bit. It was really
it,
interesting,
it,
and then they set up, and the corners sort of went nowhere a couple of times, I felt, but
well, that's the thing. We started taking a couple of short corners, and
mm,
we were always under hitting the passes, so you were never having that shot or never having that cross.
yep,
And so yes, when we did go long with the corner traditionally, then we were trying to target Pope. Well, we tried a couple of short. Odegaard would take the position just like 10 yards away. Yeah, but we fluffed a couple of those. So maybe he was just saying, don't fuck it up, go long or whatever. I don't know,
well, I
but
think
it's
this was instructing him to go short on this one, and it was the
oh
one where it
okay,
ended up with I think it went back and forth between a couple of them, and then it ended up going sort of far post, aiming to get. I think it was Lewis Skelly actually was coming in far post, trying to hook it back
okay,
over, is what it looked like he was probably going to try and do. But it was just interesting to
okay,
watch. There
yeah,
seemed to be a bit of tension
I,
around the corners, and I think it's because we had so many of them that I assume they've got sort of a
yeah,
set order. They go through a certain number of patterns or routines and have a little bit of, the caller decides between one, two, or three, and that's maybe your different corner routines they're going through,
yeah.
and maybe they just exhausted them because it seemed like we had about 6 or 7 corners that first half. We did seem to really, whilst we didn't have great chances all the time, we had a
Yeah.
boatload of them over a couple of spells.
Yeah, and I don't mind the players taking. Yeah, we had 7 corners in the first half,
Yeah,
and we had like 10 overall. But I don't mind the players taking a bit of like, look, I'm having a beat on the pitch, and I'm here a bit like Declan Rice, his first goal against Real Madrid. If he was being told to cross it, and he goes to Saka, shall I shoot? Yeah, why not? Bang. Yeah, So sometimes the players have to take charge; it's their responsibility, and so on. So it is, but yeah, I some good corners and some not so good. I think there was one where Odegaard ended up shooting miles over, but there we go. But then the 16th and 18th minute was sort of it was I think the biggest dangers were like Barnes had space to run from the halfway line, and he actually took a pretty weak shot, and I didn't realize this until I saw Match of the Day. It took a deflection, and
yeah.
had Raya been just, it could have easily wrong fitted him, and lucky he hadn't shifted his weight one way or the other. But it was an amazing. Well, Donnarumma would have just stopped it with the big palm of his hand because he's about 10 foot tall. But David Raya was really like stretching to get it, and it was like a superb save because he could have easily been wrong footed. And then from the resulting corner, and again another Raya speciality. He seems to be a double save specialist this season, where like Dan Burn header, great reaction save, and then he stops a rebound on the line with his feet and sort of boots it away. So yeah, nervy moments. I think we're all fearing the worst, and I think had Isaac been around, maybe they would have had someone to put away some of those chances.
Well, I think the worst offence I saw at one point was one of their counter attacks, of which pretty much all their opportunities kind of came from winning the ball reasonably deep, and it was one where Callum Wilson just seemed to be running free as a bird through the centre with absolutely nobody looking to actually go to him, and it was just crazy. It was one of those moments where you're looking at a back four, and he sort of angled his run in that kind of way where you're looking to try and pull one out of position and try and make somebody come to you. And we just seemed to have, I think it was Kivior, Saliba, and Lewis Skelly just seemed to just stand there, not being held by anybody because
Hmm.
nobody was ahead of Callum Wilson. You had players left and right making
Yeah.
runs, but not to any degree where somebody shouldn't have just stepped out. And we seemed to be backing away despite being yards off him. And that was the moment, I think, where I got really worried because I looked at that and just went, "Oh dear, that's not normal." We don't
Well,
do that
well,
normally. That's all a bit weird.
well.
Why has nobody gone to him? Why was he so free in the first place? But nobody's going to him. Nobody's stepping up and being the man. I think that's the point where I said in our group chat, I really need a leader at this point, basically. Like, it felt like, and I was watching Odegaard at the time, I felt first half it was body language more so than performance. He looked really tired and really head down. There was no head up and riling people and trying to G up everybody or telling people what to do. And there was a lack of anybody doing that. And there was also
Yeah,
a point where Saka got really frustrated in one moment as well. And he kind of, and Saka can do that. So he can sometimes
yeah,
come across a bit like that. And, largely when other players aren't as good as him, which is
yeah.
understandable because not many are. But
No,
he had a couple of moments of getting really huffy as well, I thought. And there just seemed to be a bit of an attitude of the players of either huffiness towards their teammates or slopey shoulderness. It was one of the two,
uh,
and sort of
I,
just turn away and put your head down, and that's where I got really worried. And that moment, for whatever reason, just really summed it up for me. And luckily, Callum Wilsoned it.
yeah. Well, yeah,
But it just had that feeling for a moment. It left that residual bit in me going, Christ on a bite, I can't
yeah.
do another
We're in a bit of danger here.
50, 60
Yeah,
minutes of this. We're not going to be able to
yeah.
do. We need to get in at half time.
Yeah, I think again, I think it's tiredness, a bit of it. I think Partey was a very atypical of someone who can go fast, running away from their goal to the opposition goal, but running towards your own goal, running through treacle. And there was moments where you look at him and he just couldn't. But we've seen him sprint. I mean, what was it that I think was it the goal that we scored when he ran the whole distance of the pitch and like was sprinting?
Yeah,
Like, what the
yeah,
hell?
yeah.
So like there's that thing when running back to your own goal, all of a sudden it's like someone's put a weight behind you. Saliba, obviously, he came off at half time, so maybe Saliba was carrying something, and so do that. It is interesting. There was a few moments where I'm like saying, like we've played football, and go to the man, go to the ball, go to the ball, and they stand off and they stand off and stand up, and now obviously they know football better than us, and they know their angles, and they know they're told what to do. It always feels a bit unnerving when no one's at least trying to go to the ball and don't leave it too late. So I know what you mean when it sort of feels bad, but then nothing comes of it, and it's only Callum Wilson, is fine. So I don't know, but yeah, I know what you mean, and I don't think not a lot happened for the rest of the half. I think there was the other grumble was there was this lovely ball whipped in by Kivior, and it
Oh
was
wow,
it
yeah.
was what a pass, and there was just no one making a run. And I put here tongue in streak. We need a striker, so to be in the box. So just anyone to be in the box. I don't care if it's a striker, but
Do you
yeah,
know
and
that did have Marino written all over it? That did. I mean, in
exactly,
fairness to him, he's got really good with exactly those kind of balls, Marino. Like, not necessarily actually making the connection, but being somewhere around it, sprawling out, and
yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
landing on his face because he's not a striker. But
yeah.
it did feel like it really needed a presence there, didn't it?
Yeah, and it just wasn't to be. So anyway, look, I think it sort of petered out, and an interesting stat actually, and like you're worried about the first half hour. Actually, Newcastle, they had their last shot on target, so they had 5 shots on target against us in the first 18 minutes, but then after that, nothing. So actually, so it felt like we're in danger, and I think we're getting back into the game. Calafiori comes on for Saliba at half time, and apparently another hamstring injury, which is not surprising given the minutes and the efforts he's put in recently, and another one
Yeah,
that it's not like we have any choice but to play him. I mean, I think he's got the most outfield minutes, about 4,400 minutes over 51 games. I think that's the most past Raya, and yeah, look, when you don't have Tomiyasu, you can't bring someone else to play there. It's interesting. He does play all the time. I think he's like and also look, here's another stat. He's made his 100th Premier League appearance, and he's started all of those appearances, completing 90 minutes in 96 of those games. He's been
yeah,
subbed 3 times and 1 red.
yeah.
And it's sort of he plays Carabao Cup, he plays FA Cup. Yeah, and this is where we miss Tomiyasu, or if you've got a fit Ben White alongside Timber, then that's where you can rotate. But no, what are you supposed to do? Aiden Heaven wasn't going to be the answer, so it's just and hopefully it's just nothing. Hopefully he misses the the French internationals, and he buggers off to Saint Tropez, and just sits on his ass for a couple of weeks. So we'll see. But what it did mean, we had the pure joy of seeing Calafiori. Come on, I mean, how much? Well, I don't know. Before I eulogize, are you a fan?
A fan of
Calafiori.
Calafiori, sorry. Yeah, I thought it's the position I want to see him in more anyway. To be honest, I like to see him. I want to see more of him at centre half. I've told you, I think a bunch of times that I don't like him at left back. I'm never settled by him at left back. I like what he does going forward at left back. I'm really worried about his ability to be able to turn largely. I don't think he's got he's got the turning circle of an all tanker, to be frank, and he's a big fella. Of course he has. That's fine. But even in comparison to like a Saliba, who's relatively similar in terms of his build, I'd say even Gabriel. I think Gabriel's got more twitch. I swear to God he has. I don't like Calafiori being turned. I think he really does lose a man in those kind of short yardage cases and where somebody's got a decent twitch or burst on him. Saying that, really like the player. I think he's got so much to give. I really do. Yeah. And I think it's such a shame that during the time... it's a shame and it's not a shame. Kivior's been fantastic since Gabriel's injury.
Yeah.
He really has. Really stepped up to the extent that I look at Kivior now and I go, do you know what? You'd have to give us a decent chunk of money to take him away as a backup for next season, because that's a hell of a backup to have available to you. But there's a bit of a problem there in that for a player to get enough minutes from that centre-back spot, they're also going to need to be able to fit in at left-back as well. And I don't like either of them there. I don't like Kivior there, and I don't like Calafiori there for slightly different reasons. Kivior, on the other hand, I think is actually, much better defensively at left back and an absolute, doesn't really give you a great deal going forard. Anyway, so it was nice to see him at centre half.
Actually, maybe just before that, just before you finish that point, maybe Kivior now would play better at left back, given the minutes he's had within the team and all the rest. It may not be ideal, but he's had a run. If you were to put him at left back now,
he's fine, but he's a third choice. He's not. I wouldn't rotate him in. Whereas Calafiori, you would rotate, and we have done it, and he has looked good there at times. I would worry about him against top wingers, and anyone who's going to get the ball a bit too much is the way that I kind of see it with Calafiori. Would I like him at left back in this game? Absolutely bloody not. Newcastle's wingers are really good. And they don't send, and they've got nice twitch, and I don't want to see him in that position, right? However, do I mind him going left back in a bunch of other games, especially when we have lots of the ball? Actually, I really like him when we have lots of the ball. He's great then, because he's playing really progressively and everything's fine. And we're really good at stopping the counter attack in those kind of games. This kind of game, I'd have worried about him if he was there. But as centre half, I thought he played well, and I thought it was nice to see him there, and I'd like to see him get more minutes there. And I think it would be great to see him with an injury-free season, being able to go in and rotate with Gabriel and get more minutes at that left centre half spot. The only issue being, as I say, that then you bump into Jakub Kivior, who's turned into this, this really, really enjoyable deputy as well. And at the moment, the big thing is Kivior doesn't seem to get injured, which maybe you say he hasn't played as much. Calafiori's barely managed to string out a few games before getting an injury and has passed of it. So it was nice to see him there. I'd like to see him there more. I think that's that's kind of the end of it. But yeah.
No, I know. I love him. I mean, I'm not really sure what he is, but you just can't miss him. And he came on.
Your tabs. That's the thing.
No, it's just. But you see him and he comes on. It's like he played left centre back. But when I was watching, when we were attacking, I didn't really pay too much attention to his defending, apart from one moment towards the end of the game. But he was taking up positions inside the penalty area, here, there, and everywhere. And Newcastle did not know what to do with him. And it was sort of like nuts, just what the energy that he brings. And maybe this is interesting to see the contrast of someone who's relatively fresh coming onto the pitch, and he stood out a mile compared to everyone who's absolutely on their last legs. He said he was energy personified. I think he's great. I want to see him. I'd love to see him have a fully fit season. put some games together, just see what he is, what we want from him. I think he is going to be the backup left back to MLS. And you're right, if we're going to be dominating possession, he could play easy, no problem. And if we're maybe fearful of the wingers, then you got MLS as the player. But yeah, it'll be, and he's younger than Saka. He may not, he comes across as a big stature, big guy, but he's still pretty young. So he's got a lot of development there, a lot of room to grow, as a footballer. So I'm looking forward to seeing him having the way Timber sort of came through this season after being injured last season, that something like Calafiori does. Just because you see him and he's just sort of like, and maybe it's the antithesis of what Arteta's about. I don't know. Who knows what Arteta's about?
What he did so well for the Italy team in the World Cup, isn't he? He was eye-catching for those. He played left centre half in a back three, didn't he? And the typical Italian sort of back five, back three, and he looked fantastic striding upfield with the ball and then distributing it. And it is very Arteta. I think actually Gabriel at his best is is in weird and awkward positions at times, and we've seen him look like he's a centre forward a couple of times because he's got caught upfield and gone balls to it. I'm staying up here, lads. Somebody else cover me. In the more fluid moments for the Arsenal, I think actually you do see that, and we've seen William Saliba dribbling up the pitch and trying for a solo goal and stuff. I don't think these things are necessarily anti-Arteta in any way, shape, or form.
No.
I think.
I mean anti. Just
at the top of our game, I think a Calafiori at centre half is a really intriguing prospect, and I love the idea of it. It's just I just don't know. Sort of in the medium, it's almost more in the short and medium term. What's he going to be? And it's really interesting to see. So it was interesting to see him play centre half because he hasn't really done that for us. He's largely just been playing left back. And I mean, when we signed him, obviously we had the bit of a deal. At this point now, it's over a year and a half ago, but where we were wondering about Gabriel's future because of the Saudi interest and whatever. And, I think a few people wondered if Calafiori was being warmed up for that, almost forgetting. And now that Gabriel's not been linked with anybody in about a year and a half, you sort of go, well, what is going to happen with him? And I think it's just nice to have him there. It's just nice to have him there and find out what he is. He's got loads of time because he's like the second. He went into this season, I think, in the first team squad. I think it's the second or third youngest.
Before MLS and Waneri turned up.
MLS and Waneri were fully integrated into it. I'm pretty sure he went into this season as the second youngest squad member behind Saka, I think, which is crazy because he's such a big, imposing lad, and just you don't, and he's a World Cup centre half and stuff. You don't necessarily think of him as being a real youngster, but he is. He's got loads of time on his hands, and even if he costs us a bit of money, we can afford to let him have a couple of years to work out what he's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can offer next year. And look, it's all about options. All about we need as big a squad as possible if we're going to try and our failings have been, and we know why. But there is potentially a trend of us sort of peaking a bit too early or flagging like with a month or so to go. So if we have these choices, we have these options, we can rotate around. So then everyone comes into winning season fully firing, fully fresh. Then we gives ourselves a better chance of getting those trophies that we all want. So there you go. Anyway, so it was good to see him on, and I'm sure he made a big difference to the team. And then so 10 minutes later, so Rice, we get that 1-0 goal from Rice that says superb finish. That was Arsenal's 50th shot against Newcastle this season, and it was the first goal. Jesus, we've actually hammered them in shots wise, but we just can't score. And now Declan Rice has now scored more goals for Arsenal, 16 and 102 appearances than he did for West Ham. He scored 15 off 245, and he scored 4 goals from outside the box this season, which is the most by an Arsenal player since. Take any guesses? 21, 22?
From outside the box? Laka?
No.
Aubameyang?
I was surprised by this. No, he's not with us anymore. And not that he's dead. No, he's not that he's dead. He's gone to another club.
Nicholas Pepe?
No, Emil Smith Rowe, which I was surprised about.
There we go.
Yeah. So, and Alexis Sanchez got 6 in 2014-15. So there we go. So look, it's nice to see someone just twat it from outside the box for a change. And then what else? Again, not a lot happened. I think there was interesting moments like Kraft got a yellow. I don't think it was a red. I think there was enough around him not to get the red, but he got a yellow before he touched the ball. And then there was the MLS header over. Sorry. Oh no, there was the Ben White chance. Oh right, on the 70th minute, I think. White went marauding, and because we all gave him grief, I think before we all gave him grief the last time he went marauding, he didn't shoot. This time he went through, and it was just wide. And then
that was tremendous fun. In fairness, that was very nice to witness. He did seem to fancy a goal a couple of times, didn't he? Because he also had the one where he dribbled into the box and went over looking for a pen when it was like the least likely pen of all time. But
he was just knackered. He's below that.
He'd had a bit of a run, hadn't he? He was like, "Oh Christ, I haven't travelled this far with a ball since a year."
Exactly.
It seemed to fall over himself, but he did. He had a couple of strikes on goal and really seemed to back himself. It was nice to see.
It was good. And then it was waka time in the 76th minute. So nice to see Havertz get back. Just a bit of a presence. I think we were needing an outlet up front, just to hold on to the ball. So everyone I think is surprised to see him back, and it was great to have that. And then Arteta was booked in the 82nd minute, which means he misses the Southampton game. So he'll be in the stands for that one. But I don't know. I think he was harshly done by it. I mean, it was delaying the restart. I thought he was trying to pass the ball back, but because he was wearing his suit shoes and not his boots, he didn't hit it quite well, and it went back onto the pitch instead of sort of going straight down the line. And so the referee just sort of like booked him, which I thought, all right, really? Okay. And then
nah, mate, I mean, I'm glad to see that for a former Premier League footballer, it's the same as me, that you get the ball out when you're wearing your work shoes, and and you go, oh no, it's just I've had boots on, obviously, like it's just totally different, isn't it? Well, I'm messy when I've got boots on, but you've caught me in my wedding gear, like can't be expected to play in it.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, it is what it is, and it doesn't matter. He can have a rest next week as well. And then Tierney comes on, 88th. As I said, I'm sure he's coming on for his last appearance at the Emirates, and I'm pretty sure he's played more minutes at wing than at left back this season, which is a stat I'm sure no one was expecting. And then here was the Calafiori moment, and you would have seen this better than me. But oh my God, there was a couple of heart and mouth moments towards the end. One was the Calafiori header, racing back, and it was a long header. And oh man, it just about got it, and that was bricking it because, if he'd mishit it or something like that, oh man, that was. And then there was you would have had a really good view of this. Was there one where Raya went to control, instead of catching the ball, went to control the ball with his feet to try and sort of then have that moment and all the rest of it, and then he got pushed over by is it Osula? But was that near you when he in the corner of the penalty area? What was he doing? Just catch it. I don't know.
Not a clue. It was a bit weird. To be honest, there was a lot of that. Again, I weirdly felt quite secure in these moments because Newcastle just seemed to disappear after we scored.
Yeah.
To be honest, from about 10 minutes before half time, they seemed to just take their foot off the gas. And at that point, it was only a question of whether we were going to sabotage. Weirdly, they just completely went to sleep. They brought on a few players who all looked shit, to be honest.
Yeah.
Azula was one of them. They sort of brought on this suite of players a couple of which I'd never really seen, and was surprised by how low their squad numbers were. Like, I think Azula was number 18. I was like, who is he though? I think I've heard of him once before. And they just didn't really do anything, but we did absolutely 100% seem to do everything we could to just sort of unsettle ourselves. But and when was the Kivior challenge? Because that's worthy.
I remember it, but I haven't got it on here. But I know I remember someone's mentioning it. I don't have that one.
That for me was that was the most panicky moment, because I don't remember it that clearly now. But I think. I can't remember who it was who effectively had a strike on goal. If he hadn't have just got back and made an absolutely lung busting challenge to get back, and then managed to whisk it away.
Wow.
And I think, I mean, to be honest, it's the fastest pace I've seen anybody run in an Arsenal jersey of our defence without getting injured in about
Wow.
the last 3 months, to be frank. I mainly was just concerned he was going to get up with a hamstring injury. But it was,
Which
but
wouldn't surprise us.
it was a lovely moment because it was one of them
Yeah.
where, when you are in that position where you've got an opposition who aren't really capitalising on the fact that you're still looking a little bit nervous and shaky, but and they look so naff at it that actually it still somehow looks somewhat comfortable for you, but you're just aware that you're having to win balls that you feel you probably shouldn't have to. You've emptied your bench and brought on a load of players to say goodbye that, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure that Jorginho needed to be on that pitch. I don't think he, to be honest, I think
I think that was just wasting time. I think
yeah, a little bit of wasting time and a little bit of say goodbye, right? You know,
Really,
Jorginho, I mean, maybe
I don't think it was saying goodbye.
Maybe not that bloke, is he? He's probably not that bloke to do out of sentiment. But you know, Jorginho, KT, and you know Havertz. I don't think we're going to add a huge amount to that game, but they and as a result,
at least
pace just seem to disappear off. But they just get these awkward chances, largely coming out of something just clumsy or unnecessary or you know whatever it might be. And that was one of them where he got back, made this thunderous challenge. And at that point, he just kind of went, yeah, it's fine. In the moments, we'll be there. We'll be all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wait, look, that last few minutes, and even, I don't know why the ref played an extra 2 minutes on top of the 6. I mean,
that was crazy, wasn't it?
No, it was unnecessary, you know. And look, we had chances. We had chances to break. We just couldn't get our act together. You know, it was a bit up and down, bit basketball-y. You know, we just couldn't. You know, there was one time that Ben White just kicked the ball up the field to nobody, just expecting the referee to blow the whistle. He didn't. It comes back, and then
I don't think that 11 have ever played together, right? It's just one of those weird. Teams by the end of the game where you're like, you've got Calafiori at left centre half where he's never really had a chance. You've got Kivior moved over at right centre half. You've got Kieran Tierney playing left wing. You've got Kai Havertz back for the first time in like 4 months, and you've got Jorginho having just been jumped on to have a bit of a kickabout towards the end. And, you know, it's to be expected. I didn't expect nothing from us going forwards, to be honest. I just expected us at that point to just be like, should we just try and you know, keep the ball or whatever. I didn't think we had any real discernible game plan other than Mikel just going, these lot look like they've shat the bed a bit and they're not that good now. So just go out there and just keep making challenges and keep making saves, basically. And, you know, see if you might get another one up the other end because they've, you know, put too many players forward.
Yeah, well, we could. I don't think we made a clean. I don't think we actually had a clean shot. But there was times when Martinelli and Havertz, should have done better. But anyway, we held on. I think it's one of those games. If you look back in the cold light of day, I said Newcastle after the 18th minute didn't have a shot on target. I think they didn't really have many shots there afterwards. So actually, if you look in the cold light of day, we didn't control it. But I don't think we were under any huge pressure either. I think it was just game state. I think it just got tense. Everyone was a bit nervous. We just wanted to hold on for the win so much, and so on. You could see them trying, but they didn't really create much. So I think it's just one of those ones that again, game state
perfect articulation. I think, that makes sense.
So and I got down here a great game for the neutral, but who gives a shit about the neutral?
I think it was an awful game for the neutral.
Oh really?
Why would you want to turn up and watch two teams be a bit shit? Like this was not. This was a long way short of either of those two teams' best games.
Maybe I put that note in the first 20 minutes because Arsenal were getting battered, Newcastle were going to score, and maybe I write that then rather than at the end of the game. So there we go. Well, look, there you go. It was. We got it. We got it done. Secured second place practically. Champions League qualification. Job done. Go to the beach, relax, and so on. And there was a lap of appreciation. Did you stick around for that?
Yeah, I stayed for a bit of it. I wasn't rooted to my seat the whole time. I was having a bit of a. I think I went to the loo and came back and sort of was doing. They're always good to see. For some reason though, we've been a bit sport when the end of the season is in the last game. It's always got something a little bit more to it.
Yeah.
Plus, normally I've had a beer as well, and I sort of enjoy it a little bit more. And I wasn't in very much of an enjoying it mood yesterday. I had a horrendous back pain, and that was unfortunately causing me to really not enjoy it. But it was nice to see, and I wanted to stick around for a bit and give the boys a clap and whatever because I think I think everybody acknowledges there hasn't been a lack of effort on behalf of the playing staff this season, and I don't think there's been a lack of passion from Arteta at times either. And it's also great to see him, I think, speaking a lot of supporters' language in the last couple of weeks as well, in the way that he's been reflecting on the season and his plans for next season, and even turning up at that podcast that you went to, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's the kind of engagement you don't normally get off many gaffers these days, right? So, I thought, absolutely want to stay behind for a bit and see some of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, no, that was nuts. So, yeah, it was the Arsenal Vision, Arseblog live pod at the Union Chapel on Saturday night. And yeah, then just in the second half, they said, oh, by the way, we've got a special guest. And they've had Ian Wright before. And we thought it was going to be just someone talking about the charity work that they do and they've helped raise money for. And then all of a sudden, two big, massive bodyguards turn up. Stuart McFarlane comes through, some PR lady, I'm sure, and he said, "Welcome, Mikel Arteta." And this was like literally in front of us, like we're row two. It's like, oh my god! And like, yeah, everyone starts getting up, clapping, singing. We got Super Mick Arteta song, and it was sort of like nuts that he would just come to this thing. I think that the players and the team stay at a hotel just around the corner. So he felt like he just walked in, had a chat, walked off, and went back to the hotel. But it was amazing, But still, he doesn't have to do it. These are just okay. They are the big podcasts and so on and things like that. But just to and they do work with Arsenal on certain things. So I think that was really really good fun. But in terms of what he said on the pitch after the game. Look, I know he says what he says and he has to say it, and it's funny. Some people just say, "Oh, yeah, it's platitude. He has to say what he says," and all that. But I don't know. Look, I'm predisposed to like what Arteta does and like what he says. So certain things he said, and when he said we need to make sure that chasing a dream doesn't get blurry, and we make sure we chase the dream with positivity and enthusiasm next season. No, I buy into all of that. I'm drinking from drinking the Kool-Aid or whatever the terminology is. So and I don't know if it's the microphone, but he always sounds like he's going to burst into tears when he does the end of season speech because. Yeah, I'm all in on the way he speaks, the way he talks to us, the way he does things. He's got his faults. Everyone has their faults, But I think he's trying to do it in the right way and as best he can. And as I've always said, given where we are with what's happened this season, no matter whose fault it is, it's an incredible job. So I'm all in, as they say.
Exactly the same. Yeah, I thought we came across absolutely fine. And it's. He always comes across well on those things at the end of the season, and of course he's had time to prepare and whatever, and he's always pretty much known what the outcome of that last home game's going to be. But but I like the way he comes across in those. I have no issue with it at all, and it's all the sort of things that you want to hear, and obviously you want to see a little bit more in the summer from the club in different ways. We know there's a couple of things that need to take place to shape up the squad further. But certainly, I'm enthusiastic about what that's going to look like.
Well, Josh, I think Josh Kroenke was in the Matchday program on Arsenal.com. Said we plan to invest to get behind winning and doing better next season. We're delighted to have our sporting director Andrea, who will play an important role in this. He's part of a unified and strong team, supported by the board, who are crystal clear on exactly what we need to do and the way we want to do it. The right way, the Arsenal way. So again, messaging's there. People will take what they want from it. People who are cynical will just say, yeah, it's just words. People who want to believe it will believe it and have hope. Whatever your predisposition will determine how you feel about these things. And then at the end of the day, your actions are what count. So these are all words. We've had words before. So we'll have to just
We've
see.
had no issue with backing people with money, have we, at least?
No.
Ever since they got full control, we haven't had a summer where we haven't spent, one of the top spenders of the Premier League. We've been pretty much since they got full control, we've been top spenders in the Premier League most summers, or at least we've been in the top couple, right? So it's about where it's directed and how it's directed, right? And that's the question. And I think we all acknowledge that maybe last summer, unfortunately, was not a brilliant example of it. I think we've done well out of the players we got. I'm happy with them in the longer term, but in the medium term, it didn't do the job for where we needed to get to. And then the winter window is ultimately the one where we felt like it really lacked. And, there was a mitigating factor there in what happened with Edu, but it's probably still, it's the damage done bit, right? And so we'll see what happens. But I'm feeling pretty optimistic. I think also as well, the key thing is that there are a few decent earners go out of contract this year, and there's no faff. It doesn't feel like we've got a faff about situation like we've had for a couple of years of we would like to offload X and bring in some money that we need. I think absolutely everything you look out there is saying we have an excess at this stage of money from an FFP point of view to be able to go and spend. Champions League semi-final will further enhance that as well in terms of anything you can structure into the next year. There's a boatload coming down the line that will hit next year for that semi-final. And the associated extra gate revenues, TV revenues, and prize money revenues for that, which are big, in comparison to the previous season. And so there's a whole lot to be, I think, really, really optimistic about, and hope that they can get some decent business done and start seeing, let's just have a season where we're a bit more lucky as well.
Yeah,
we might have
always
been
helps.
quite lucky at certain times in previous seasons too. Certainly on the injury front, I think we were. But this season, we've had sort of about three different elements of bad luck all at once. We've had, the worst of decisions. We've had the worst of injuries, and we've had some in-game moments as well that have just been, just things just having it the rub of the green. So you go, well, give it another go next season, and heads up, it's still. And I maintain this. I have yet to update my spreadsheet like a proper nerd, but I have one, as you know. You've seen it, I'm sure. I'm pretty sure I shared screen with it, and I'm still pretty convinced this comes down as being about our 17th best season. 17th or 18th, which is just the perspective that you should have over these things. I think
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's what people lose. But that's fine. Everyone has their own way of dealing with these things. So look, okay, that's it for the Emirates this season. It's been a slog. I've enjoyed it, but it's been bloody hard work at times, and maybe it hasn't ended the way we want it to do. But yeah, the future's bright. I believe. I think sometimes you can be as good as you want, you can have the best players, but you also need a bit of things to go your way. So let's hopefully that happens. That's next season. So before we move quickly on to Southampton, I did want to make a special note to Palace winning the FA Cup at the weekend. I think that was nice to see. I think it was great to see, and now Eddie Nketiah has more English trophies than Harry Kane. So and no and
and
nobody's
has more English trophies than Harry Kane. That's my big one for that. I love
there
that.
You go.
Righty,
yeah, and look, no one begrudges Palace. I think I'm sure when it comes to next season, we'll be hating them as much as anyone else if we don't get the 3 points. But no one begrudges them winning this, and the manner in which they won, in controversy, Pep unhappy, and missed penalties, and someone please explain to me how Henderson was not sent off. Not that I wanted him sent off, but I don't get that. Yeah,
I'm just looking forward to how Simon Jordan's going to tell us that it was actually somehow part of his master plan and vision from when he owned Palace 20 years ago, and like Steve Parish just inherited all this from him. Basically, he set him on the road.
Oh dear. But anyway, so good to see, and good for an ex-Arsenal boy to get that, and I hope no one was watching, so we get Eze on the cheap. So there we go. Let's see if we're that lucky this summer. Right, Southampton. Is there anything to look forward to and not look forward to? I in terms of not looking forward to,
what do I look forward to? Not giving a shit.
Exactly. Exactly, and watching the other teams and we have this on, and the other ones, all them slogging out for top 8, top 5, whatever. You're right, not just relaxing, just having a pina colada on the beach, just not giving a shit, and there's nothing
Let's
not
just
look
watch
forward
David
to.
Raya and Aaron Ramsdale just chuck the ball to each other for like 90 minutes. Let's just watch them just
Yeah.
bypass the midfield, and we'll see who can kick more accurately or whatever. I don't know. It like who genuinely, it's brilliant, isn't it? Like 71 points, so that's it now. There's no, or actually, can somebody catch us by winning both? I do forget some
Well,
teams still have to play
only
tomorrow.
City. So it's only City. So it's City are 65, but the
Yeah,
goal difference is
meteorically different, right?
it's 10. So basically, whatever they score, and they play. I have got it here because I
So
did
they
check
go
it. So
and
they
win
play.
5-0 twice, and if they score 10-0 in effect, then
Yeah.
they
Well, then
could.
we're tied. I don't know. How how it works there afterwards. But anyway, so they're playing Fulham away on the last game of the season, and
Yeah.
they're playing Bournemouth at home.
I fancy they could lose
Tomorrow.
either one or both of those, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
depending on whether if either of
Well,
those teams fancy it, then they're good enough to cause City trouble at
yeah.
the moment. So you never know.
And to be honest,
I
I'm going
think,
to be
to be
more
honest,
interested in.
that's what I'm looking forward to. I am pretty much last day of the season. I am very little interest in our game, and in absolutely glued to the fucking screen, looking at the like 5 teams below
Well,
us.
the Forest Chelsea's
Brilliant.
the big one. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Forest. If Forest win, Chelsea,
United as
and if
well for me
Forest
is going to
win,
be quite a common. Yeah.
yeah. So So look, we got Newcastle on 66
There's a lot
points,
to look forward to
Chelsea
on
on
the day. I think
66,
the day is
Villa
going
on
to be absolutely
66,
brilliant.
City on 65, Forest on 65. And also what happens in those games, and Fulham need the points. So Fulham will be going for it against City, because if they get up to 57, they could get into 8th place, and 8th place could get into Europe. So
It's probably going to now,
yeah,
isn't it? Basically, I mean, between the two cup competitions, us getting to the semi and the City, the Tottenham United performances
well, I
means
think
that
it also Chelsea need to win their Tin Pot Cup as well against Betis. So we'll see. But yeah, so it'll be just nice just to relax and not worry about it, and it'd be someone else's problem. Saying that, do you think Arteta always wants to win games, but I don't think I think this would be one where he doesn't unnecessarily play people who are buggered. So it'll be interesting. Any ideas on who's going to play? What sort of lineup he's going to do? Minutes for KT,
I'd look to see when
Jorginho.
we get a start. I think it'd be good
Yes.
for him to finish the season with a game, low pressure game.
Yeah.
Really, I don't know. Was anything up with him for the Newcastle game?
I think again game state. I don't know. Maybe something's been up. Look, we don't know. We're not there.
Interestingly, he's taken his foot off the gas from a bit, and I don't disagree with it, because I think he's a very different stage, I think, to MLS, for instance, whereas influence going up and down, and obviously they see whatever they need to see about him, and will treat him as they best that's their best see fit. But I'd love to see Ethan in the side for that last game, just to just to see him play at least another game this season, because he has been a part of this season's story, and it would be it'd be really good to see him get a chance to operate. Other than that, a few more minutes for Kai would be nice to see. There's going to be no Timber, so what we're talking about at the back, MLS at left back, and who's going to go in right back? Ben White.
Well, if
second game.
if Saliba is injured, maybe it'll be White, Kivior, Calafiori, MLS. I mean, what else have we got? Yeah, I mean, if Saliba's a hamstring, they're not going to
bring up Josh Nichols and you put Ben White in a right centre half, because that's the one thing is just more. And I'm sorry,
Josh Nichols is the right back. Josh Nichols is the right back.
See, I knew I would remember. There we go. It's relevant. I mean, you could do something like that. And at this point, when you're going down the Dell on the last game of the season and Southampton have been relegated for about the last 4 months, then it sort of feels like, why not? You might as well, wouldn't you? Tell you what, let's put Ethan there. Let's see if he can do a shift. Like, kill 2 birds, 1 stone. And I don't mean right back. I mean, you want to keep Ben White in his natural position. Put him at right centre half and see how he partners.
Yeah. I would just suggest if they've gone to the Dell, then they've gone to the wrong place. But there we go.
Well, whatever they call it now. All right,
St Mary's.
St Mary's. All right. Yeah, they only moved there 30 years ago or something, didn't they? But
But see, I don't think Rice will play. He'll be on the bench. I don't think Saliba will play. Saka, maybe not. Don't think about it. I think anyone just on last legs isn't going to play. But then also, who else have you got? So we'll see. So maybe we do see Marino midfield, get Winery up there. Don't know. It'll be interesting. Again, it's one of these ones. Who cares? It'll be interesting. It's like watching a Carabao Cup game. It's like watching a Carabao Cup game. You don't really give a shit about the result, and it's just quite nice to see other players play. And that's that. And as for the Saints, they are proper shit. Look, they'll want to end on a high. It's their final Premier League game before going down. We'll be on the beach. Maybe it's a chance to get a big scalp. They recently drew against City. I mean, they were absolutely battered, but since February, they've won 1, drawn 3, lost 10. Their home form is played 18, won 1, drawn 3, lost 14. Goals against 12, goals against 45, goals for 12, and the away is pretty much the same. So they are proper bad. And I've got a picture of the table here, and it just makes me laugh so much about seeing 16th and 17th as well. God, if only those bottom 3 teams have had a proper season, Tottenham could have been relegated, and they've lost 21 times. I'm sorry, I will always bring discussions about the bottom clubs back to Tottenham because they've lost 21 times.
Oh, mate, I've been looking at Tottenham and United stats, and you're there going, their points tally is very much. I mean, I was looking at previous seasons trying to find which seasons they would have been relegated in, and there are a few where if they can. I was looking at this about 3 games ago and going, but they will pick up enough points. They'll actually end up, in a position where I can't find many seasons when they would be relegated, right? Because it used to be the magic total we always used to talk about was 38, wasn't it? Point per game, you stay up. But there's been a few exceptions to that. Well, obviously the two of them, United have got Villa chasing Champions League.
Yeah.
They're going to lose. And I would love to see Spurs lose their last game, but the two of them not making 40 points is absolutely incredible.
I think Man United haven't won a game in the last 10 games. I can't remember. There was a stage in the season.
Man United has got a worse managerial record in the Premier League than Derby County had that season that they were the worst. He's on less points per game than the record worst season ever. He's on worse points per game than Southampton this season. And we've just talked about how shit they are. It's incredible when you think about it. I don't know where they go. It's just phenomenal.
Look, I think we all want, unfortunately, them to be the lesser of the two evils on Wednesday night, purely because I think they've just got so much going on at that club is so wrong, and then them in the Champions League, I don't think it'll be they got a lot more. And the thing about Amorim and what's making it worse is that the fact that the system he plays, if you get rid of him, then all of a sudden, do you bring in a manager that plays with 3 at the back and wing backs, or does he suddenly have to change everything again? And so what he's setting up there is great, because when he's shit and finally gets sacked, they're going to have to rebuild and spend a whole load of money just to reconfigure the team going forward, because they're just set up so badly. So I'm with. I think we all want Man United to win on Wednesday, because you just cannot be having that team from Middlesex winning a trophy. And look, I don't care what anyone says. You don't lose 21 games in a season, no matter what you do, and say you've had a better season than someone who finishes second and makes the Champions League semi-final. It's just nonsense.
I'd much prefer United win it by a mile, by a country mile. However, it is just absolutely hilarious. I mean, I found it absolutely brilliant going up the Hollow Road after the Newcastle game. I'm walking home and some geezers going up the Holloway just by Waitrose and is blasting out "Glory, Glory, Tottenham Hotspur" out of his car, full blast whilst he sings it. And I just sort of thought to myself, this is really odd. I've seen this a bunch of times on the Seven Sisters normally, or sometimes on the Holloway, obviously around a derby, or when Tottenham have had a great end of season or whatever. When we're having a bad time, they're having a good whatever. And I just sort of, this is really, they're on 38 points.
It's nuts.
And also, I mean, we've won today as well, which is really strange too. It's not even like it's just gloating because we've lost a game, even though we're second and they're 17th. He was just driving up the road, singing it, top of his voice, doing loud actions, making a big deal about the fact that he's singing it around a bunch of gooners. And just
No.
everybody, I've never seen any time that's happened where, I mean, I've seen people around by the Blackstock Tavern and stuff, throwing stones and trying to chase them down the street and all sorts when that
Yeah.
happens. This was the tamest reaction, as just a whole bunch of gooners just looked really bemused at him and just sort of almost joined in slightly, like not quite singing the words, but just sort of going,
Yeah.
"Yeah, all right, mate."
Well, this is worse. With this, rather than being hated, no, he wants a reaction. They want us to hate them. No, we just pity them. We're not even bothered by them. Yeah,
It's
look, of
phenomenal.
course we
It's
don't
just
want.
sort of, just a lot of people being very bemused and going, "What an odd bloke!" Like it was
Yeah,
sort of, not what a dickhead. What are this? I'm going to go and
yeah, it's just like okay.
don't be doing that around this way, or you start getting a bit uppity or whatever. Everybody just sort of went, "Oh, he's a bit strange, isn't he? Fair play. Well, you're going to be if you're going to be that mental, then on you go, son."
Yeah, okay, well, there you go. All fan bases have these odd blokes, and there we go. So look, what's your prediction for the game at the St Mary's Dell?
Do they still have Shane Long?
God, thank
The
God,
answer is
no.
no.
'Cause he
The
was an
answer is no.
irritant. They got Ryan. They got Ryan Fraser though. They got Ryan Fraser, who's just as much of an irritant.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't give a toss. I mean, a 1-0 loss with Aaron Ramsey coming up to score from a corner in the 96th
Aaron
minute.
Ramsey, fucking hell,
Sorry,
he's
Aaron
coming from.
Ramsdale. With Aaron Ramsdale coming up to score a corner in the 96th minute sounds like quite a
Yeah,
fun game.
I think
to
we'll
me.
all celebrate. Everyone will be celebrating, won't they?
I wouldn't
Okay.
mind it at all, But in all seriousness, what a 2-0 safe victory because they're just that bad. Even if we do pitch up with Josh Nichols and Wanyeri and I don't know, everybody that's not started in God knows how long,
Yeah. Yeah, the butler up front delivering. So let's see. I've gone for 1-1. Just that I just feels 1-1. No one will get. Some will score. Some will equalise, and they'll go. You're right with the point. You're right with the point.
I just think they might be that bad. From everything I've
Okay.
heard, they were. I mean, apparently against against Everton. Sorry, Everton
Yeah.
weren't good, but they just
No.
sort of breezed past them 2-0 because Southampton are just that. It's almost that poor that you sort of you're going into it with such a severe handicap in your favour that it's really quite bad if you can't just go and put them away. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we really will be so at the beach, and I wouldn't care. I genuinely I wouldn't be disappointed even if we even managed to lose it 1-0 or whatever, because they decided to have one last big hurrah and send Simon Rusk off in style, which also be nice because he was a Championship manager legend in about 1999 when you bought him from Peterborough for about 60k. But anyway.
Well,
if that all goes, that's all good. I don't really care.
I watched Match of the Day yesterday, and I for one I watched the post match interviews of the Everton Southampton game, and I didn't even. Yeah, if that guy was sitting next to me, I wouldn't have known he was the Southampton manager. That's how much attention I've sort of paid to them. But
he played for
there we go.
Scotland in the 21s in the late 90s and early noughties. So he's just one of those kind of types that's burnt into my head, and I used to buy on a for cheap.
Very good, very good. All right, look, we're done. Jeez, 80 minutes in. I wasn't expecting that to be honest. But I've enjoyed it. It's been fun. That's that from the Emirates, but we still got one game to go. So look, we'll be back post Southampton with a pod, and then we'll be looking to do season reviews, look at transfers. We've got our online community pods, and we've got some pretty cool guests lined up. Some big names, hopefully, coming on to do that. So there we go. So look, you can follow us on Blue Sky and Threads at the Grove AFC. Like, subscribe, chat, do all that jazz. So yeah, look forward to hearing from you all. And thank you, Jamie, for this special 100th episode and fun post Newcastle chat. So thank you, and I hope your back sorts itself out.
I'd love it too. Back down to masseuse, mate.
Yeah, I've had bad backs, and it's no fun. It's no fun at all. So there we go. Look, there we go. So that leaves all that leaves me to say is until the next time, come in, you Gunners.